The False Identity. Part 1. The Suspicious Photos. It all began on a cold November night. Emma was sitting alone in her cozy living room, wrapped in a soft blanket, listening to the quiet ticking of the clock. Her husband, David, was supposed to be back from his business trip, but he had called to say he would be late. Emma didn't mind. She was used to his busy travel schedule. David worked in finance, or so he had always told her. As she waited, Emma decided to check her emails. She opened her laptop, expecting the usual messages about shopping discounts and a few emails from friends. But one email, sent from an unknown address, caught her eye. The subject line read, "The truth about David." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She thought it might be spam or a prank, but curiosity got the better of her, and she clicked on it. Inside, there was no message, only a few attached pictures. She hesitated for a moment, then clicked on the first image. The photo showed David standing in front of a well-known hotel in Paris. Emma recognized it instantly. She had always wanted to go to Paris, but David had told her he had never been there, that he didn't enjoy European travel. Yet here he was, smiling under the bright Parisian lights, looking relaxed and at ease. She quickly opened the second picture. This time, David was in front of a large, old building, one that looked like it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. Emma's mind raced. David had told her he only traveled within the country for work. He was careful about this. Every detail of his travel was planned and familiar. Flights within the U.S., meetings with clients she'd sometimes heard him mention. But these photos told a different story. Emma sat back in her chair, a mix of confusion and disbelief swirling in her mind. The man she knew, her husband, seemed to be someone else entirely. Feeling uneasy, she decided to call him. Her fingers shook as she dialed his number. The phone rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. She tried again, but still no answer. She thought of texting him, but what would she even say? She didn't want to sound accusing without knowing more. After a few moments of silence, Emma pulled herself together. Maybe she was overreacting. People often take pictures during vacations or business trips, and perhaps David had been to Europe for work and forgotten to mention it. Could be innocent. But deep down, something felt wrong. The photos didn't show a man on a simple work trip. They showed a man who seemed relaxed, who seemed at home in these foreign places. Emma couldn't ignore the feeling that her husband had hidden part of his life from her. Unable to sleep, she stayed up late, searching through her own photos and memories with David. She tried to recall anything he had ever said about travel, work, or his past, looking for signs she might have missed. For the first time, she questioned everything she thought she knew about him. The night passed slowly. By morning, her doubts had only grown. She had decided. She needed to know the truth. The email didn't give her any more clues about who had sent it or why, but she was determined to find out. She couldn't live in the shadow of these questions anymore. When David returned that evening, Emma tried to keep calm. She welcomed him with a smile, as if nothing had happened. They sat down for dinner, and he talked about his trip, mentioning names of clients she had heard many times before. Emma played along, nodding, asking questions, but inside, she was studying him. Later that night, as he slept, Emma quietly took his phone. She knew it was wrong, but she needed answers. She scrolled through his messages and emails, but everything seemed normal, too normal. There were no messages from unknown numbers, no unexplained emails, and nothing about any trips to Europe. It was as if he had hidden every trace of these places from his life. Days passed, and Emma became more and more obsessed with finding out who her husband really was. She reached out to old friends, looked up his work history, and even called the hotel in Paris, pretending she was confirming a past reservation. The pieces didn't fit. Each step only deepened the mystery. One evening, Emma received another email from the same unknown sender. This time, the message read, "You deserve to know the truth." There was a link attached. Emma's hand trembled as she clicked on it. The link led her to a private online album filled with photos of David in various countries. Paris, Berlin, Moscow, and other cities she couldn't even identify. Each photo showed him with different people, some in what looked like business meetings, others in casual settings. Some pictures even showed him with documents and briefcases, often with a serious expression on his face. It was in these pictures that Emma finally noticed a pattern. In each city, he wore a slightly different style, as though he was blending in with the crowd. His hair looked slightly different in each photo, his clothing always suited to the place he was in. It was as if he was trying to become a part of each city, to disappear into the background. Emma's mind raced with questions. Was her husband living a double life? Was he involved in something dangerous? And why had someone sent these photos to her, urging her to discover the truth? She couldn't answer any of these questions yet, but one thing was clear. Her husband was hiding a part of himself that she had never seen before, a part she couldn't even begin to understand. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma knew that her life would never be the same again. She had stepped onto a path that would take her far beyond the life she knew. Part 2. Hidden Secrets. Emma's world had turned upside down. She couldn't look at David the same way. Each time he spoke or smiled, she saw a stranger behind his familiar face. 1,000 questions filled her mind, but she held them back, not wanting to alert him. She needed proof, answers, something solid to make sense of this web of lies. That week, Emma decided to take her investigation further. She started small, studying David's behavior closely. She watched how he spoke about work, where he went, and what he did. She noticed small things she had never paid attention to before. How he was careful with his words, how he never mentioned any friends from work, and how he sometimes hesitated when she asked simple questions about his day. One evening, while David was in the shower, Emma took the chance to look through his belongings. She opened his work bag and carefully examined each item. Inside, she found his laptop, a few pens, his wallet, and some receipts. She almost gave up when something caught her eye. A small, thin envelope hidden in a side pocket. Emma's fingers trembled as she pulled out the envelope. It was plain, with no markings on the outside. She quickly opened it and found a small, folded piece of paper. On it was a list of numbers, cities, and dates. She recognized some of the cities from the pictures: Paris, Moscow, Berlin. Next to each city was a date, and the dates matched the times David had been away on business trips. Emma's heart beat faster. Here was a clue, a link between David's trips and his hidden life. But what did it all mean? Why was he traveling to these places? She carefully put the envelope back in his bag, making sure everything looked untouched. She didn't want him to suspect anything yet. The next day, she decided to search deeper. She began by looking up each city and date on her computer, hoping to find some connection. But her searches came up empty. Frustrated, she decided to focus on something more direct. She would find out where David's money was going. Emma knew they had a shared bank account, but David also had a separate account for work expenses. She rarely questioned him about it, thinking it was just for his job. Now, she wondered if it hid a secret. She logged into their shared account and scanned recent transactions. Most of it was ordinary spending, but she noticed occasional transfers to his private account. These transfers weren't large, but they were regular. What was he hiding? Determined to learn more, Emma decided to visit the bank. She spoke to a friendly teller, explaining she wanted to check a few details about their accounts. The teller nodded and pulled up the information. As they talked, Emma casually mentioned David's private account, hoping to learn more. The teller glanced at her screen and hesitated for a moment. Actually, that account is not registered as a work account, she said softly. Emma's heart raced. It's a private savings account with international access, the teller continued, and it shows a history of transactions in several different countries. Emma tried to keep calm, nodding as if everything was normal, but inside, she was shaken. An account with international access. David had never mentioned it. She left the bank with a heavy feeling, more suspicious than ever. That evening, Emma decided to confront David. Carefully, she didn't want to reveal everything she had found. Instead, she wanted to test his reactions, to see if he would lie or give himself away. During dinner, she brought up travel. "David, have you ever thought about going to Europe?" she asked casually, trying to sound innocent. David paused, then shrugged. "Not really. I don't see the appeal. You know me? I like staying close to home." Emma nodded, hiding her shock. He was lying to her face. She couldn't believe it. She wondered if she could keep pretending, but she needed to if she wanted to uncover the full truth. Over the next few days, Emma's routine changed. She started checking David's phone when he was out of the room, looking for clues. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't stop. Each day, she found small things that didn't make sense. Emails from unknown addresses, calls at odd hours, and messages in languages she didn't understand. Some of these messages were coded or used strange symbols, making her even more suspicious. One night, as David slept, Emma found an unusual contact in his phone. J.L. with no further details. She felt a rush of curiosity. Who was J.L.? And why was David in contact with them? She quickly wrote down the number and decided she would call it from her phone the next day when David was at work. The following morning, once David had left, Emma dialed the number. It rang a few times before a calm, unfamiliar voice answered. Yes. Emma hesitated. She didn't know what to say, so she pretended to be a wrong number and hung up quickly. Her hands shook. Whoever this person was, their voice sounded serious, almost professional. She couldn't shake the feeling that this person was part of David's secret. Overwhelmed with all the secrets piling up, Emma knew she couldn't handle this alone. She decided to reach out to her best friend, Sarah. They had been close since college, and Emma knew she could trust her with anything. That evening, Emma invited Sarah over. She shared everything she had found. The photos, the bank account, the mysterious contact, and her fears that David was leading a double life. Sarah listened in shock, her eyes wide with concern. Emma, this is serious. It sounds like David is hiding something big, Sarah said. You need to be careful. If he's involved in something dangerous, this could put you in danger too. Emma nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She had already come too far to turn back. She needed to find out the full truth, no matter where it led. Emma made a plan. She would gather as much information as she could without raising David's suspicions. She would be smart, careful, and patient. As Sarah left, Emma felt a sense of relief. She wasn't alone anymore. She had someone she could trust, but the path ahead was still full of unknowns. With each passing day, Emma's curiosity grew. She knew that the answers were close, that she was getting closer to the truth. But she also sensed that this journey would change her life forever. She couldn't go back to the simple life she had known. For now, she was prepared to face whatever secrets lay hidden in David's life, even if it meant uncovering a side of him she had never imagined. Part 3. The Truth Revealed. Emma's life had become a maze of questions, and each day only deepened her mystery. She knew David wasn't the man he pretended to be. Yet, she still couldn't confront him directly. She feared what he might say or do. She wasn't sure she was ready to face the full truth just yet. One evening, Emma decided to visit David's office, hoping to gather more clues. She had never visited before because David had always said it was just a boring finance job. But now, she couldn't ignore the need to see it for herself. Emma waited until David was out for another business dinner. She made her way to his office building, a tall, modern structure with a glass facade. When she entered the lobby, she felt nervous. She worried that someone might recognize her or ask questions, but no one did. She approached the front desk and smiled at the receptionist. "Hi, I'm here to pick up something for David Ross," she said calmly, hoping she sounded casual. The receptionist looked at her for a moment, then smiled politely. "Oh, Mr. Ross? He's not in today. I think he's traveling, actually. Can I help you with anything specific?" Emma paused, surprised. David had told her he was working all day. Why had he lied? She forced a smile, pretending she wasn't fazed. "Oh, I must have gotten the days mixed up," Emma replied lightly. "I'll come back another time." As she walked out of the building, her mind raced. Why would David lie about being at work? And where was he really? This small lie seemed like just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Determined to find answers, Emma spent the next few days searching for anything that could lead her closer to the truth. She looked through his drawers at home, opened old boxes in the closet, and even checked the garage for hidden papers or items. But there was nothing. It seemed David had carefully erased any trace of his other life. Finally, Emma thought of one last option. She would check their home computer. David rarely used it, but she hoped he might have left something there by accident. Late one night, after David had gone to bed, Emma quietly turned on the computer. She checked the usual folders: documents, downloads, desktop. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. But then she found a hidden folder named Simply Work. Emma clicked on it, and a password prompt appeared. Her heart sank. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had to try. She entered simple passwords first: David's birthday, their wedding date, and even their pet's name. But none of them worked. Taking a deep breath, she tried one last thing. She typed in her own name, Emma. The screen blinked, and to her surprise, the folder opened. Inside, she found a single file named Project Aurora. Emma hesitated. The name sounded serious, almost dangerous. She clicked on it, and a long document opened. It was full of codes, names, and places. Many of the names were unfamiliar, but she recognized some of the cities: Paris, Berlin, Moscow. It all felt strange, like she was peeking into a world she didn't belong in. As she read, she began to understand that Project Aurora wasn't just a simple work project. It mentioned secret meetings, foreign agents, and coded messages. The document didn't make everything clear, but it was enough for Emma to see that David's job was not in finance. He was involved in something much bigger, something secret and dangerous. Emma felt a wave of fear. What had David been hiding from her? Was he a spy working for some hidden organization? She couldn't understand it fully, but she knew one thing for certain. Her husband was leading a double life, and it was far more serious than she had imagined. Just then, she heard a noise behind her. Her heart stopped. She turned around, and there was David, standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. "What are you doing, Emma?" he asked, his voice calm but cold. Emma struggled to find words. She had been caught, and she didn't know how to explain herself. She couldn't think of a single excuse. I was just looking through some files," she stammered, feeling her cheeks grow hot. David stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You've been digging, haven't you?" he said quietly. "You've been looking for answers." Emma swallowed, her fear growing. She felt trapped, unsure of what David would do next. She had never seen this side of him before. He looked like a stranger. "Yes," she admitted softly. I found out about the trips, the bank account, the messages. David, I don't understand any of this. Who are you? For a moment, there was silence. Then David sighed, his expression softening just a little. Emma, I never wanted you to find out like this, he said. I wanted to keep you safe. But now that you know, there's no going back. Emma's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but the secrets, the lies, they all made her doubt everything. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Tell me the truth, she said firmly. No more lies, David. I deserve to know who you really are. David looked away, as if choosing his words carefully. Finally he spoke, his voice low and serious. I work for an agency, he began. A secret agency. My job involves gathering information, meeting people in different countries, and sometimes doing things I'm not proud of. It's not a job I can talk about. Not even with you. Emma listened, shocked but curious. She had never imagined that her quiet, loving husband could be involved in something so complex. Why did you lie to me? She asked softly. I had to, he replied. The fewer people who know, the safer it is for everyone. Especially you. I didn't want you to get involved in this life. It's dangerous, Emma. Emma's mind spun with questions. But one thing was clear. Her life had changed forever. The man she had loved and trusted was someone entirely different. She didn't know if she could trust him anymore, but she also didn't know if she had any other choice. David's face softened, and he took her hand gently. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought keeping this part of my life hidden was best for us both. But now you know. Emma looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. She could see he was telling her a part of it, but she sensed there was still more he hadn't revealed. What happens now? She whispered, feeling lost and afraid. David's expression grew serious again. Now you must stay out of this, Emma. Please, don't ask any more questions. Let me handle it. But Emma wasn't sure she could. She couldn't simply ignore everything she had discovered. She had too many questions, and the answers were too important to her. As they stood there in silence, Emma knew one thing. Her search for the truth was far from over. David might want her to stop, but she couldn't. The mystery of his life had become her mystery too, and she wouldn't rest until she had uncovered every secret. Part 4. A new ally. The days that followed were tense and full of silence. Emma and David hardly spoke to each other, and when they did, it was only about simple, everyday things. But Emma's mind was full of questions, and the more she thought about David's secret life, the less she could ignore it. Emma knew she had to find out more, even if David had warned her to stay out of it. She felt as if she had been living with a stranger, and it frightened her. She couldn't keep pretending everything was normal when she now knew her husband was part of a hidden, dangerous world. One night, when David was out on another mysterious work trip, Emma took a bold step. She decided to follow him. She didn't know where he was going or what she would find, but she needed to see the truth with her own eyes. She waited until he left the house, then quietly got into her own car and followed him. She kept her distance, careful not to get too close. She watched as David drove through the quiet streets, finally stopping at a large, old building on the outskirts of the city. Emma parked her car a little way down the street and watched as David got out of his car and walked inside. The building looked abandoned, with dark windows and no sign of life. She wondered what he could possibly be doing in such a place. After a few minutes, she gathered her courage and decided to sneak closer to the building. She crept up to a side window and carefully peeked inside. She couldn't see much, but she noticed David meeting with two men she didn't recognize. They were speaking in low voices, and she couldn't hear what they were saying. Emma's heart pounded as she strained to listen. She watched as one of the men handed David a file, and David nodded, looking serious. It was clear that whatever they were discussing was important and possibly dangerous. Then, one of the men glanced toward the window. Emma quickly ducked, holding her breath. She hoped they hadn't seen her. After a few seconds, she dared to look again, but the men were still focused on their conversation. Emma knew she couldn't stay much longer without being caught, so she quietly moved away from the window and hurried back to her car. Her mind was spinning. She had no idea what the meeting had been about, but she was certain now. David was involved in something far beyond what he had told her. When she got home, she found herself pacing around the living room, trying to piece together everything she had learned. She felt torn between fear and curiosity. Part of her wanted to pretend she hadn't seen anything, but another part needed to know the truth. Who were those men? What was in that file? A few days later, David returned from his trip. He acted as if nothing unusual had happened, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding more than he was letting on. She decided to take a more direct approach. One evening, after dinner, Emma sat across from David at the kitchen table. She looked him straight in the eyes, trying to read his expression. "David," she began, her voice steady, "I followed you the other night. I saw you meeting with those men." David's face changed, and she saw a flicker of something. Surprise, anger, maybe even fear, but he quickly composed himself. "Emma," he said quietly, "I told you to stay out of this." "I can't stay out of this, David," she replied firmly. "I deserve to know what's going on. Those men you met with, who are they? And what were you doing with them?" David looked down, avoiding her gaze. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. But finally he spoke, his voice soft but serious. "They're colleagues," he said slowly. "They work with me on certain projects. It's not something I can explain easily. I didn't want you to get involved because it's dangerous, Emma." Emma didn't look away. "Dangerous how?" David sighed, looking tired. "There are people who want the information we have. People who would hurt us to get it. That's why I kept it a secret, to keep you safe." Emma's mind raced. She was scared, but she knew she couldn't just walk away from this. "I need to know what kind of work you're doing, David. You owe me that much." David was silent for a long time, as if he were deciding whether to tell her. Finally, he nodded, a heavy look in his eyes. "All right," he said. "I work for an intelligence agency. I gather information on people who might be a threat to our country. It's not the kind of job I can talk about, not even to you. That's why I made up the stories about working in finance. I thought it would keep you safe." Emma's hands shook as she listened. She had always known David was smart and careful, but she had never imagined he was involved in such a dangerous world. It was a lot to take in, but she needed to know more. "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you telling me this now, when you've kept it a secret for so long?" David looked at her with a serious expression. "Because I don't have a choice anymore. You're already involved now that you've seen those men. They know about you, Emma. And that means they'll be watching us both." Emma felt a chill. She hadn't realized that her curiosity might have put her in danger. She looked at David, her mind full of questions. "What happens now?" she asked softly. David sighed. "Now we have to be careful. I'll make sure they understand that you're not involved, that you're just my wife. But you need to be prepared. If anything happens, if anyone tries to contact you or follow you, you have to let me know right away. Promise me, Emma." Emma nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She didn't want to be part of this dangerous world, but she couldn't walk away now. David's secrets had become her secrets, too, and she knew there was no turning back. That night, as they lay in bed, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everything David had told her. Her life had changed so quickly, and she didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing. She would stand by David. No matter what, she would face whatever came their way, together. As she lay awake, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. She sensed that the mystery of David's life was far from over, and that she was about to be pulled even deeper into his world. Part 5. The Safe House. Days passed, but life didn't feel normal anymore. Emma felt like she was constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering if someone was watching her. Even simple tasks like going to the store seemed different now. She couldn't shake the worry that David's secret world would soon come crashing into her own. One evening, as Emma was cleaning up after dinner, she noticed something unusual. Her phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. Curious and a bit uneasy, she opened the message. "Meet me at the old cafe on Oak Street tomorrow at noon. Come alone. I have something important to tell you about your husband." Emma's heart raced. Who could this be? How did they know her, and what did they want to tell her about David? She thought about showing David the message, but something inside her stopped her. What if this person had information David hadn't shared? She needed to find out. The next day, Emma arrived at the cafe a few minutes before noon, her mind full of questions. The cafe was nearly empty, with only a few people sipping coffee and reading newspapers. She sat down at a table near the back and waited. A few minutes later, a man in his late 50s with gray hair and a serious expression entered. He looked around, then walked straight to her table. He sat down across from her, his eyes steady and watchful. "Emma," he said in a low voice, "my name is Mr. Carlson. I used to work with David a long time ago. I'm here to help you understand who your husband really is." Emma felt a mixture of relief and fear. She hadn't known what to expect, but something about Mr. Carlson seemed trustworthy, even though he was a stranger. "What do you mean?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. "David already told me about his work. He said he's involved with an intelligence agency, and he kept it a secret to keep me safe." Mr. Carlson nodded slowly. "Yes, that part is true. David and I were part of the same agency. But there's more to the story, Emma. David's work goes deeper than you know. He's not just gathering information. He's been undercover, pretending to be someone else, for years. He's involved with people who are very dangerous." Emma's hands trembled as she listened. "What kind of people?" she asked quietly. Mr. Carlson leaned in closer. "International criminals. People who wouldn't think twice about hurting innocent people to get what they want. David was chosen for this job because he's skilled and trustworthy. But this life comes with risks, and now you're at risk too just by knowing the truth." Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. She had wanted to know the truth, but now that it was in front of her, it felt heavy and frightening. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" Mr. Carlson looked at her with a serious expression. "I'm telling you this because I know David will do anything to protect you. But right now, he's in more danger than he realizes. His cover is at risk. Someone close to him has betrayed him, and if we don't act quickly, his life, and yours, could be in danger." Emma's mind spun with questions. "What can I do? I'm not part of this world. I don't know how to protect myself or David." Mr. Carlson nodded. "I understand. But there is something you can do. I need you to be my eyes and ears. If anything seems strange, if anyone contacts you or asks about David, you need to tell me. I can't help you if I don't know what's happening." Emma took a deep breath. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. "All right," she said. "I'll help. Just tell me what I need to do." Mr. Carlson gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Good. Trust me, Emma. We're in this together. I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." They exchanged contact information, and Mr. Carlson told her to reach out if anything unusual happened. Before leaving, he warned her again to be careful, especially around people she didn't know. When she returned home, Emma felt the weight of the conversation. She had entered a world she didn't understand, and now she felt a strange sense of responsibility. She hadn't asked for this, but she was in it now, and she would do whatever it took to protect herself and David. Over the next few days, Emma stayed alert. She watched for anything strange or out of place. She tried to act normal around David, but she felt the tension building inside her. One evening, just as Emma was beginning to relax, she noticed a car parked down the street. It wasn't anyone she recognized, and it seemed odd that it had been there for so long. She remembered Mr. Carlson's warning and quickly took a photo of the car with her phone. She sent the picture to Mr. Carlson and waited, her heart pounding. A few minutes later, he replied, "Be careful, Emma. That car belongs to someone who's been watching David. Don't approach them. Just stay calm and keep an eye out for anything else unusual." Emma felt a surge of fear. She hadn't realized just how serious things were until now. But she was also determined. She would protect her family, no matter what it took. Later that night, she decided to tell David about Mr. Carlson's warning. She couldn't keep it a secret anymore. She found him sitting in his study, looking over some papers. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady. He looked up, surprised by her serious tone. "What's wrong, Emma?" She told him everything. About Mr. Carlson, the meeting at the cafe, and the strange car parked outside. As she spoke, she saw David's face grow tense. "I should have known they'd try to bring you into this," he said, his voice full of frustration. "Emma, this isn't safe. You shouldn't be involved in this world." "But I am involved, David," she replied firmly. "You're my husband, and I'm not going to pretend this isn't happening. I want to help you. I want to keep us safe." David looked at her, his eyes full of emotion. "Emma, I never wanted you to be part of this. But now that you are, I promise I'll do whatever I can to protect you." They sat together in silence, both of them feeling the weight of the danger around them. Emma knew there was no going back now. She was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant stepping deeper into the mystery of David's life. As they sat there, side by side, Emma felt a strange sense of courage. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to stand by David and face whatever dangers lay ahead. Together, they would find a way through this dark, uncertain world. Part 6. A New Beginning. The next few days were tense for Emma and David. Now that Emma knew about the danger, she felt even closer to David, yet also more afraid for him. Every sound outside, every unknown person on the street made her wonder if someone was watching them. But through it all, she knew one thing. She was determined to protect David, just as he was trying to protect her. One evening, David received a call that seemed to change everything. Emma saw the serious look on his face as he spoke, his voice low and urgent. When he hung up, he turned to her. "It's time, Emma," he said. "They're closing in on me. My cover has been fully exposed. We need to leave now." Emma's heart raced, but she nodded. "Where are we going?" "There's a safe house. It's a place where we can hide until it's safe to leave the country. But we have to hurry. They know where we live now." Without wasting another moment, they packed a small bag with essentials. Emma looked around their home one last time, knowing they might never return. It was a strange feeling to leave everything behind, but she reminded herself that her life with David was more important than any house or belongings. They slipped out of the house and got into the car, driving through quiet, empty streets. David took a route that was winding and indirect, turning at every few blocks, making sure they weren't being followed. Emma sat beside him, clutching the bag tightly, her eyes scanning the road. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a small, hidden house on the edge of the city. It looked old and worn down, but David assured her it was safe. Inside, the rooms were simple, with a small bed, a kitchen, and some basic supplies. David explained that it was built by his agency as a place to stay hidden. For a few days, they stayed in that small house, not daring to go outside. David told Emma everything he could about his work, the dangers he faced, and why he had been forced to keep it a secret. Emma listened, her heart heavy but full of understanding. She knew now that David had been trying to protect her all along. One evening, as they were eating a small dinner, there was a sudden noise outside, a car pulling up, and footsteps approaching the door. David's face went pale, and he signaled for Emma to stay silent. They listened, hearts pounding, as someone knocked on the door. "It's Mr. Carlson," said a familiar voice. "Emma, David, open up. It's safe." David hesitated, but then slowly opened the door. Mr. Carlson stepped in, looking tired but calm. He closed the door behind him and turned to face them. "I have news," he said, his voice serious. "David, the agency managed to track down the person who exposed your cover. They've been captured. You're safe now." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her, but Mr. Carlson held up a hand. "However, your cover is blown permanently. You can never return to your old life. The agency has arranged new identities for both of you. You'll need to leave the country and start over somewhere else. It's the only way to keep you both safe." Emma and David exchanged a long, silent look. They knew what this meant, saying goodbye to everything they'd ever known and starting fresh in a foreign place. It was a huge change, but they also knew it was their only choice. Mr. Carlson handed them new passports, tickets, and instructions. "You'll leave tonight. Everything has been arranged. This is your chance to start a new life, away from all the dangers." With a heavy heart, Emma accepted the documents. She knew this was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, even if it was a chapter they hadn't expected. That night, they left the safe house and followed Mr. Carlson's instructions, moving through a quiet airport terminal, blending in with the other travelers. Emma's heart ached as she thought about the life they were leaving behind, but she also felt a glimmer of hope. This was their chance for a peaceful life, free from secrets and danger. As the plane took off, Emma looked out the window, watching the city lights grow smaller and smaller below. She held David's hand, feeling a strange mix of sadness and excitement for the future. "Wherever we go, we'll have each other," she whispered, squeezing his hand. David looked at her with a soft smile, his eyes filled with relief and love, and as they soared into the night sky, they knew that, no matter where they ended up, they would face their new life together. Just the two of them, free from lies and fear, ready to make a fresh start. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting tales. Check out our other videos for more great content and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for the next adventure. Thank you for watching.